You know, rites of passage in our culture have really, I think, gotten lost, and I think many people suffer from not knowing who they are at a particular stage in their life. And you know, the value of a rite of passage is meant to shift your identity and place to its new location, so that you can think differently, orient differently, respond differently to the world around you. And you can't just do that yourself. And I think what we have really work to do is to take people for 7 days and make it feel like a lifetime, or we step outside of time and you're stripped away from all the things that you identify with as you, and saying they don't matter anymore. What matters now is who you find yourself to be in this new condition. You know, and when there's enough of an undoing and a taking apart of something that's so familiar, and you can survive that and not have to reconstruct yourself or pull yourself together to who you know yourself to be, it opens the door, you know, completely opens the door to what starts to become possible. And I find that takes at least 48 hours for a modern human being to get stripped away from all these identifications, which is really pretty damn fast. And being able then to gravitate towards a whole nother orientation. And that's where we would, you know, use the reflecting mirror of nature, the reflecting mirror of a ritual and of a group, you know, and using your body and using your voice, and working with song to lose yourself and to let yourself go. And to let what wants to come forward start to come forward, which is not easy for civilized people.
Yeah, I was telling friends that have never been on a through hike, it's usually the third night that I sleep on the ground. I wake up the next day and I'm feeling, you know, new, deconstructed, and then anew.
Yeah, so what I find the hardest part of entering into any kind of ritual passage is many people want to be different. They just don't want to position themselves through in a way so they can be different. We all want to do something different, but we don't want to undo what we always do, which is one of the hardest things to work through. And I think ritual does that well. When you do a rite of passage, it's that stripping away and of what's familiar, so that I can't go back to it, and I've got to just stay with what I don't know, and being confined to that construct or to that experience, and a way as profound as I can tolerate it, to see what comes right after that, and then to pay attention to it.
I think some of your adventures are oriented towards youth around the time that they're having this rite of passage or coming of age experience. Can you describe or give us a little narrative about how that has played out, or you know, any experiences that come to mind?
Well, when we do our rite of passage program with youth, we include them with the adult men. They happen at the same time. And they're both with themselves as 13 to 16-year-old boys or girls, young men or young women. And then they're included oftentimes with the whole group. We do this thing called a timeline, where we did it again this summer in our men's program, where the youngest man was 13 and the oldest man was 77. And so when you're with 70 men in a circle that starts from 13 and goes all the way to 70, that alone has an impact, you know, in terms of that ritual of the circle and cycle of time, and where these guys start to feel their place. And when the rest of the camp treats these young boys like men, that's something that has an impact on them profoundly. And they begin to speak like men and resonate like men, as opposed to trying to find out what it's like to be a man from their own resources. So I think these are the kinds of rituals, these intergenerational rituals that can happen in families, or broken apart in families don't have them, where you simply get to feel yourself as a man among men when you are no longer a boy among boys. And I think that has been really profound. And in fact, when we do our evening rituals, we do grieving rituals, and we include the boys with the men, and they watch men grieve and attend to one another and speak their grief and speak their losses, and just their ability to withstand that and respond to it is amazing, to watch them step into themselves in new ways and find a new voice and respond to how they're affected. So for us, one of the most important things about including young men into a coming of age is their participation, not just watching. That they get in and they do with us, and sometimes they do for us. And I think that's how they get a sense of worth and a sense of identity as a man.
Well, it seems like such a ritual would give them a better sense of time too, and the conscious evolution of an individual. If you're standing in a circle with men or women aged 13 to 70, you can kind of see yourself in each position of life there. You get an idea of the microcosm from the macrocosm, the culture at large. I find that interesting.
You do, and and then you can ask questions of each other and make comments to each other across that. And it's interesting to see. For one of the young men said, what's the difference between us down here and you down there? And they said, illness and divorce. So losses, if you live long enough, you start to suffer losses, and that, like I said, feeds into our grief ceremony that we do, and where you literally introduce boys to the way men handle their interior lives. And one of the lines of Campbell that I always remember is, if you want to help this world, you teach someone how to live in it. And that's an example of what we do to help teach these young guys how to live in the real things that happen over time to us as men.
And I'm sure these journeys have the effect too of resonance, where they carry it with them. They embody these actual experiences, that they have, and which has more of an effect, or is more effective than simply reading or watching a documentary may have.
Well, I think the difference between participating in a ritual like that, whether it's young men learning about the sense of their manhood, the young women do this as well with the women, and experience what adult women think and feel, is that you can get a taste, you can get a taste at best from reading, and you can get informed, but information isn't enough. You need something that resonates in your bones. And our ways of we live these journeys so that it creates this touchstone in your own interior life that you find yourself referring to again and again. You might not think of it for 6 months, but then someone dies in the lives of one of these kids, and they remember the ritual that they had. And that's the beauty of I think, myth gets in your bones, and it gets into the unconscious well, so that it's not something you constantly think about in the foreground of your life. But if you enact the ritual correctly, it's planted so that when the time comes, it comes forward when it's needed. And I think that's what's really important about living into a myth as opposed to reading it. You may be able to, and I think Campbell was someone who was an avid reader as well, and as am I, and I know passages come alive to me, and poetry comes alive to me out of the unconscious, but it's always by something I'm currently living through, not just something I'm reading. Myth is something you live through.